Welcome to the Bridge the Gap podcast. Here's your host, Dustin Ludke.
Welcome in, everyone, to another episode of Bridge the Gap. I got a fun one tonight. We're going to be talking all things coaching and mentoring, what that looks like in today's age. And we're bringing on someone that I've known for, I was thinking today, like 20 years, a real good friend. Oh, my music keeps playing. I've got Dean Curtis. He is the CEO of Ingage, which is like a business-to-business software company, but formerly with Apple and Oracle. Also a FSA lacrosse coach. He's been a lacrosse coach for, it seems like forever. As long as I've known him, he's been a lacrosse coach. Dean, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, when I switched away from the football, I was like, man, it opens up so many more guests I can bring on. And I was like, I just happened to be on LinkedIn. I was like, oh, I should have Dean on. He's a great person to talk coaching and mentoring. And that's kind of how I plan these out. I'm like, what topics do I want to hit and who kind of fits where? And then I look at someone like, oh, I like this person. What can they talk about? So before we get into it, why don't you give everybody kind of your experience with coaching and mentoring, kind of your experience with in the business world and the sports world, where you've been and what you've been doing.
Yeah, it's funny. You know, I think back to my coaching experience in terms of the coaches I had a lot of bad ones.
Yeah.
And
we'll get into that.
I think they motivated me to get into coaching. And I've always loved sports. My sport of choice is lacrosse. I never really was decent or I was half good at some other sports, but I ended up playing college lacrosse. It was the thing that I really enjoyed doing. And interestingly, when I moved to where I live now, I was reading in the newspaper one day. Yes, we used to read newspapers, and there was a classified ad for lacrosse coaches, and it was Philly, and Philly wasn't a huge lacrosse area. I was like, man, that's pretty awesome. I can go and coach lacrosse again. And I think it's always been in me. You know, I made a LinkedIn post a couple of weeks ago, and one of my college teammates reminded me that I'm a teacher at heart, right? Yeah. So I might be a CEO in business right now, but at heart, I'm a teacher. It's like that's what I was made to do. And coaching, mentoring, even being a CEO, that's what I am. I'm a teacher, right? And so I think it's just wraps up, and I really have this gift and also this strong desire to help people become better. And I think that's what a coach does, is to see the potential in somebody.
I agree. And a couple weeks ago, I had a podcast where we talked the difference between like leadership and management. And I think if you are a leader and a manager, you are a teacher and a coach and a mentor on some level.
Totally.
And because that's just part of that job, that role is to coax the best out of your employees, right? To coax the best out of your team, to get them to the next level in terms of where you're going as a company, but like as a sports team, like where they're going as a team, like to see each person grow, but also see the team grow. And I think you have to there's people that just aren't cut out to be coaches, right? There's people that aren't cut out to be, mentors. Not to say they don't provide things, but they just don't have maybe the disposition or that, like you said, that innate desire to like want to teach and want to see people grow. And I think that's a huge difference, because I think we talked leadership management and coaching and mentoring. There's just people that just aren't gifted in it. And I think that's the biggest thing, where we see people who go, yeah, but this is what I need to do to fulfill my resume or to get to that next promotion. And they're just not suited for it. And when you're not suited for something, you end up doing it poorly. And you said you've had some bad coaches, and right, I've been in worlds where I've had bad bosses who, are not good, mentors or coaches in that realm. I never really played professional sports, but I can see where there's some bad coaches out there. And you just, if you get put in that place, that's what you think you have to do, you end up it's a detriment to you and everyone else around you.
Yeah.
What do you think is the difference between coaching and mentoring? Because they're similar, but they are slightly different, in my opinion. So what do you think is the difference between coaching and mentoring?
I think it's the first thing is it's what the other person in the relationship comes to the relationship assuming. So if I'm a coach, let's say I'm a coach of a lacrosse team. Well, the athletes under my tutelage are expecting that I'm going to tell them how to play the game. I'm going to instruct them in how to play the game. In mentoring, I'm asking a lot more questions.
Yeah.
I'm challenging the things that the mentee knows. And I think it's a fundamental difference between the two. Whereas the coach is, I'll use the word sage loosely, right? They're the one that really knows. And I think in mentoring, it's about looking and they're very similar, because you are trying to make the most and get that person to be the best version of themselves that they can. But I think coaching is a lot more X's and O's. And I think mentoring is a lot about asking the right questions to get the person to arrive at the decision on their own, because then they have a lot more ownership over it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think how they got to the decision that you ultimately want to get to is a very big distinction, right? Because you're right. Coaching is, hey, you need to do X, and this is what you need to get to this point, and this is how you get there. Whereas mentoring is, right, asking those questions to kind of like subtly guide them so they come up on their own. And I also think like coaching for me is very short-term oriented. It's very skill and task oriented of, I'm going to coach you in, in the sports world, I'm going to coach you in how to take face-offs or how to shoot a shot. Or in business world, I'm going to coach you on how to, build a spreadsheet or how to do sales. And whereas mentoring is more of this long-term personal growth aspect of, hey, I want you to just be a better person. And in that, I'll teach you some overarching grand truths and philosophies on life that'll help you be better in all these areas. But it might not be the specific thing, but you'll have a general structure, whereas coaching is very just singular task oriented.
Yeah. I think I'll say this too. Like, one thing I believe about mentoring is you should be mentored by someone who's been down the road. You should be in a relationship with, you should be a mentor for someone who isn't where you are. And then you should also have peer relationships where you're mentoring each other, where you guys are in the same boat. And I think you can have those three levels of mentors versus coaching. Like, I coach teams. I'm trying to get those teams to work together. That's not as much mentoring. Coaching is trying to pull all the pieces together at times. It's just very different.
Yeah, right. They're very different, but they're also so similar. That's why I kind of lumped them together. I agree, because mentoring, I agree. You have to have someone who's been there, done that, right? Who has been further, like where you want to be. If I want to be, a CEO, I need to have a CEO mentor me. But you're right. You have to have someone. You should be mentoring someone else, which I get into, which I think is a lost art in today's world of mentoring someone under you. But I do think that peer relationship is also huge, and that's part of corporate structures, team structures, marriage, whatever it is. Like, there should be something you look at and go, hey, this person has a successful marriage. They've been married for 30 years. I've been married for 10. How do I get there? But who else has been married for 10, 12 years? And I can be, okay, hey, you're a newlywed. Let me bring you along and tell you the things that I screwed up or where we faltered or the rough parts we had. That's where it becomes this mentoring. And there is that expectation process of, what they're expecting out of you. I can coach someone in business or sports or marriage or podcasting, but if they don't have that expectation of hey, I'm actually going to I want you to lead me and do these things, it doesn't really work. And that expectations is interesting and definitely something that has to be in line. Yeah. In your experience with coaching and mentoring, what have been some of the issues you've seen or you've encountered in your time coaching and mentoring?
Oh man. Receptiveness. I'll start there. So the people you're working with, are they receptive to the coaching? Are they receptive to the mentoring? I think, and it's another great distinction between coaching and mentoring. Some people come into your sphere for coaching because they were on a team, because they didn't really choose it. It chose them. Mom and dad, put them on a team. So now you're coaching them. Versus mentoring, it's more of an opt-in. Right. And I think the receptiveness of the person that you're coaching or the person that you're mentoring, it's massive, because if the person that you're trying to influence, isn't bought into what you're doing, it's not going to be the same. And if they are, that they're receptive to the coaching, they're hearing you, they're asking great questions, they're engaged in the activity, it makes or breaks the ability to really connect and make a difference.
No, I completely agree. If you guys are watching, if you have questions about coaching and mentoring, feel free to throw them in the chat. We'll answer your questions. Again, this is a 3-person conversation between me, Dean, and you guys in the chat. The receptiveness is huge, and I think there's this sense, and I'm a big believer, and I say this a lot, is buying into the why of what you're doing. And if they don't buy into the why, they're never going to accept anything you want. And so that's a huge part of it, is how do you connect them. And they have to believe that you are who you say you are, and you know what you say you know. And I think we see some people come into these situations where they're like, I'm going to mentor you in this. It's I don't believe that you have the experience to mentor me or to coach me. I haven't seen it. I don't believe it. You don't project that. You don't, exude that. There's no history. And that becomes really hard because that's the hard part of getting into coaching and mentoring. Like if you want to be a first-time coach, you've never coached. How do you gain that experience? And like, how do you get people to buy into the why, right? We can talk about something like Ted Lasso, the show, right?
Amazing
show. But the guy was a coach, but knew nothing about soccer and had to get that team to buy into the why of what his vision for the team was. And it wasn't about his soccer skills. It was about his coaching skills as making them better men and making them a better team. And so that's hard. You just have to get people to buy into the why, and they have to be. You're going to have people that are less receptive, right? You're going to have people that are like stubborn and maybe like the old coach, or don't want you as a mentor, don't want you as a coach. They think they know better. And you just have to, like, it's going to be a struggle. And that's the biggest thing I've really been in my time of like coaching and mentoring in business is there's people who just think they know better than you, even though they haven't done it, or maybe they've done it a little bit and they want to do things differently. And what I've noticed is the biggest hurdle is getting them to be bought into the why. But once you explain the why, you can get them to buy in, and that receptiveness does fade after a while, and they become more receptive to your coaching and your mentoring. There's different styles, obviously, right, of coaching and mentoring. I'm sure you've had plenty of coaches in your lifetime, or bosses.
I've had the hardo, the softy, like, and everything in between.
Yeah,
right.
And that's I think a part of it is you got to know what you are, and you maybe have to change your technique based on the person you're dealing with. I have always told people I'm a hammer. I do this when I have interviews now. I tell people, listen, I'm a hammer. If you don't want a hammer, I'm not your guy. If you want a hammer, I'm your guy. And there's been places like, yeah, we just don't need a hammer. I'm like, okay, cool. I get it. Because if I would have came in, I wouldn't be happy and you wouldn't be happy because I'm going to try to hammer things and you're going to go, nope. And, my current boss seemed to want a hammer. So he brought me in because he's a softie, but he wanted a hammer. So I'm the hammer at work and I'm okay with that.
I'll tell you another issue is when they make it about themselves.
Yes.
I think one of the biggest mistakes a coach can make is that it's about you and your record or your prestige and I was actually mentoring one of the coaches on my staff this year to talk to him a lot more about coaching the athlete rather than coaching the mistake. And because he was almost offended by the fact that the players weren't executing the things that he thought he taught them. Like it was some reflection on him. Like, no, man, they're high school athletes.
Yeah.
They're not going to get it. They're going to still make those mistakes. So I think that's a huge mistake or an issue that I see in coaching and mentoring is the coach or the mentor making it about themselves when it isn't at all. It's one of the most, I think the best coaches are humble servants to the people that are under their watch. And when you make it about yourself, it could be a massive issue.
Yeah, I had this down in the next one we were talking about is like, where has it been successful? What have you seen as successful? And what are the things you've learned from that? And I had on it like selflessness is a huge part of it because when you are selfish, it definitely becomes, you get frustrated and the frustration builds and then you have a short temper and things don't go as well. And then you get burnt out because you just feel like you're, banging your head against the wall because you're looking at yourself instead of what you're looking at them. Yeah. What are some instances where you've seen success and what lessons have you learned from coaching and mentoring?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is remembering that it's not about me. It really is not. It's about holding true to the values that you want to instill in a team or in a person and remembering, you mentioned it earlier, the why. Yeah. It is so important to have a why that you're going after. Like we just finished a lacrosse season and what did we finish? 10-7. We lost in the playoffs. We hosted a playoff game and you look at all the measures of success and it's like the 7 losses, probably 5 of them were avoidable. I'll call them avoidable losses, right? Yeah. If we execute a little better, we maybe don't have some injuries. We would have had a better result on the scoreboard. But that's not why I coach.
Yeah.
I coach because the 32 kids on our team are better today on May 20th than they were on March 3rd when they entered our program. And as long as I stay true to that, then it's okay to handle the losses. And I don't handle losses very well sometimes, right? But I bet the most success I think I've had is when I can pause and remember and get back to the true core of why we do this. And it's to help young people challenge themselves so that they will be better off having been and spent the last 12 weeks with us in their life.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things I wrote down was like, you need to have similar goals, right? And I think when you talk to the coach, in the sports where I'm coaching, like, yes, winning is a lot of people's goals, but that's not necessarily the goal. It's being better than you were when you started. My son's 11. He plays, elementary school basketball, which the games are like 20-17. Like they're not like high scoring games, but and he just goes, "Oh, we lost." And I go, "Buddy, I don't care. Like you played really well." He fouled out in the game. He fouled out. And I said to him, I said, "I'm so proud of you for fouling out." And he said, "What?" And I said, "Listen, it showed you were trying. They weren't like malicious fouls. It was, reach-in fouls in basketball." I said, "I'm proud that you tried. And you, even after taking 2, 3, 4, and you knew you were in, like your coach told you, like, hey, you're in foul trouble." And the ref talked to him, like, he still tried. I'm like, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the effort. And that was the goal we had for him. I was like, I want you to show more effort the last game of the season than you showed the first game of the season.
Totally.
And so it's having those similar goals. And they don't always have to be the same. They just have to be similar, right? So your goal as a coach might be, hey, I want us to be better this season than last season, or game 15 versus game 1. And your players might be, hey, I want to score, I scored 2 goals last year. I want to score 4 goals this year. They're similar. Like you just want to be better. Just how it's expressed might be different.
Yeah. And it's, I just started reading a really good book. It's by John Wooden, who's one of the ultimate
greatest coaches ever. Yeah.
And his ultimate for every one of his teams is that he got the most effort out of everyone. Because if your effort defines your success. Your success is not defined by the scoreboard. The scoreboard is a reflection of your effort, both in the game, but also in the preparation. So if you're giving all the effort, the scoreboard will be what it's going to be because you're given everything you could possibly give. And if you've done that, how could you be upset about the result?
Yeah.
Success is truly about effort.
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of people in every sports Hall of Fame who never won a championship, right? I'm a Bills fan. Jim Kelly, Andre Thurman Thomas, they're in the Hall of Fame. They never won a Super Bowl, but their effort showed that they were successful, and they are Hall of Famers because of the effort they put into it and their attitude and the way they went about it. You've obviously coached, youth sports and lacrosse. Yep. You're a CEO of a big company. You've been with some other massive companies. What are some of the differences you've seen in the coaching and youth and sports realm versus, the adults and the business side of it?
Man, it's funny. My first job was actually as a classroom teacher, and I'll never forget the first day of my first year in this middle school. The principal stands up and she says, and I'm think back to middle school, like middle school, right? And she says, "Life is a middle school." Ooh, okay. And I was like, and I that always stuck with me because the answer is it's really no different. Yeah. Because we all have our things. We're all insecure. We all have imposter syndrome. We all have all of the different things that make us human in what we are. And sure, it's different coaching youth sports in terms of the emotional intelligence and all of that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, I believe that if you set standards and you hold people to standards, whether you're coaching them in sports or you're leading them in a business, if you teach those standards and hold them to standards, people love that. Yeah. They want structure. And I think that's the kind of coach I always try to be. I inspect what I expect and I tell them what the standards are, and I'm not always perfect at it. But to me, there's not much different if you are really all about holding people to a standard and then bringing them to their excellence. There's some little differences in emotional intelligence, but even adults, sometimes you question the intelligence that they have.
I agree. Standards are standards. And, I work at, the University of Wisconsin, where to me, policy is policy. And there's some that's like, well, it's gray. I'm like, no, it's black or white. Like the standard is the standard. And I don't know who, someone said that, and that's a famous quote from some coach, I'm sure somewhere. Right. But you're right. There is part of that is this is the standard, but you have to express that standard up front and express the expectations. Go, this is what I'm expecting from you, and this is what I expect you to do. And people, once they understand that, again, connecting them to the why of why, this is why I want you to do it this way or do this, and this is why we're doing this. You're right. They want that structure. You're right. There is difference in emotional intelligence, and what is the biggest problem for a teenager is going to be completely different than the biggest problem for an adult, right? A teenager is going to be like, I didn't get asked to prom. Whereas an adult might be like, hey, my car broke down and I don't have money to fix it. Or, a tree fell through my roof of my house. Like those are big differences, in terms of what might take priority in their life. But at the end of the day, if whatever you're teaching them, coaching them at, and mentoring them at is not the top priority, like something else is always going to take over. It doesn't matter what that is. Yeah. But you're right. There is very little difference. I think, life is a middle school is a great way of putting it. Like there's cliques. There's, everyone's got their insecurities. Everyone is trying to figure it out. Everyone's trying to, still figure out where they're going to be when they want to grow up. I'm 42. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. Like, that's part of it.
Yeah. I think the thing with standards too is standards are not what you communicate. Standards are what you accept. So you could communicate that the standard is X, Y, or Z, but if you accept behavior that's different, then the standard is not the standard. We just had a thing in our company. So every Monday I go into our podcast studio and I record a weekly update for the company. So all the leaders of the company give me the script or they give me their ideas. I build a script and I record this. It's usually about 10 minutes. Well, I did some analytics on the most recent 20 episodes of my weekly update. And I was really disappointed in the viewership within our company. And now it comes to find out some of our analytics weren't 100% great, but it's still, there were a few outliers that had watched one of 20. And I'm like, why? And I realized I'd never set what the standard was. Yeah. Like, I assumed that everyone would want to watch it because the CEO is reporting out from the LT that these are the things that happened the previous week. And you would want to know. Wouldn't you want to know? Of course you'd want to know. No. So now I had to, I use it as an opportunity to admit that I never set the standard. So what did I do? I set the standard.
That's the standard.
And now I can hold them accountable that if by Tuesday at the close of business East Coast time you haven't watched it, then you'll be held accountable.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You have to, the standard is whatever you accept, right? And I always like to quote, what walks in the father runs in the family. So, right, if you allow a little bit of something, the people under you are going to take it, it's just going to get bigger as you go. So if you allow, if you say, hey, you have to watch this by Tuesday, close of business, and then someone's like, I got to it Wednesday morning. Okay, then someone's gonna be like, well, I can watch it Wednesday afternoon, and then eventually it just becomes this kick down the road. It's like, it has to be the standard. You have to you have to express it. I'm a huge, I work for a couple companies and, on the side with my football stuff who just say they have standards and there's no follow through. And it's just like, cool. What are we doing here, guys? Like, we said this was the standard. And if people don't do it, then you have to correct it. And right, that's part of me being a hammer is like, cool, I'm going to go in and correct this. And some people are just soft. They're like, well, and I'm like, no, there is no well, maybe, ifs, ands, or buts. It's the standard is the standard.
That's right.
So you've been coaching and mentoring for 20 years or so?
At least. Yeah. I've been coaching youth lacrosse for 25 years.
What has changed over that time? And, I just watched you did a podcast not long where you talk about, you have a distributed team right now. So for those who don't know the term, you have people all over the country, the world, who work for you. You don't say remote work, you say distributed team, which I thought your explanation of that was awesome. Talking about how it's not, corporate versus them, it's everyone is distributed. So what has changed in the past 20 years in your coaching and mentoring, and now kind of doing in this virtual world we live in, where we can do podcasts, we can do video sessions, you can record a Monday meeting. It's not an all hands meeting. What has changed in that time?
I think so. There's a lot of things. The influence. I think the easy answer is the influence of social media and all of those. I think the biggest difference is you have to watch what you say so much. Mm-hmm. You really have to think through it. You can't be the hardo coach anymore. You're a self-described hammer. It's hard to be a hammer. Yeah, it really is. Now, I think you can be, but I think you have to bring a level of empathy that you never had to bring before. You could just be authentically you. And I don't think that's possible as much anymore. I think you can over time. Like you're the people accept how you are over time, maybe within your company, right? Yeah. But if you launch with that, you just can't anymore. Yeah. Like it's just, there's too much at stake. Yeah. And I think that's probably the biggest difference. And so you have to really think through. You have to plan your communication. You have to be a little bit more measured than maybe you were before, because as much as I like to give people grace, I don't think there's as much grace given in today's culture as there once was.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's something I've had to learn is, so, I'm from the East Coast. I live in the Midwest now. I got out here and after 3 years of being out here, I sent a survey, like anonymous survey to my staff of, 70, 80 college kids. And, a lot of them came back and said, you seem kind of rude. And I was like, I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just trying to be direct and like get things done. Like I am very task oriented at work. And so had to change that and had to really think about, hey, I'm sending this email. Let me type it up and walk away for an hour before I hit send. Let me think about what I'm going to say in this meeting and do a little more planning. I can't just go in and roll off the cuff, which I'm very good at. I'm very good at walking in and going, all right, cool, spontaneous, this is what we're going to do, blah, 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 blah. But I have to be measured in that. So there was a meeting I had, and I had some student supervisors, and we had checklists they were supposed to fill out every day, in the morning, in the afternoon. And I came in after like 3 days. We were doing it, and then they just didn't do them for like 3 days. And so I was sitting there, I was like, we have a student soup meeting. And I had, probably 15 student soups who led a team of like 17. And I was like, all right, I know exactly what I can do. And I walked in. I was purposely late. I walked in. I held up the 2 checklists. I said, do you know what this is? They said, yeah, it's the morning checklist. Do you know what this is? The afternoon checklist. I said, why the hell aren't these getting done? I slammed down. I said, you guys need to figure it out and come find me in my office when you have a plan. And walked out. And it was effective because I think if I had went in there with this, hey guys, this isn't working, I was very much, needs to get done, not acceptable. Figure out a plan, come back to me with your plan. And right, so what it was is I had to be measured with this of like, I need to think through all the aspects and what's going to happen, and in every aspect of my life. I can't just pop off on social media about who knows what, because that's going to get back to people. A lot of companies have social media policies because of that. And that's part of what has changed, is that you're in a fishbowl, especially the higher up the ladder you get. You as a CEO are in a fishbowl and you're under a microscope all the time, because anything you do could get back to the company and could cost you your job, right? Like, that's just the nature of the world we live in. Technology is a tool. Technology is neither good nor bad, right? It's amoral. It is a tool that it can be used for good. You can have a distributed team across the world, and you can record a meeting on Monday and send it out. Everybody can get it because of technology. It does also have its downsides where it can be misused, and I think that's part of it. I think that has changed. I think the attention spans that people have has really changed in terms of how you grasp their attention and how you capture their attention has changed. When I first started managing at, Manhattan Bagel, it was easy to get kids to kind of take 5 minutes and listen. Now I do it, and kids, they're on their phones. I'm like, hey, can you get off your phone for 2 seconds and listen? Right. It is very hard. Even adults, it's like, hey, can we just talk? And I think we've gone too far where it's like, hey, this should have just been an email, or hey, we didn't need this email at all.
Right.
It's just like, hey, can you just call
I'll
me?
also say though, like this whole virtual distributed thing that we have, I find we have to plan our communication far more. And almost, I think we're also in a world where you almost have to over communicate. Right. The marketing experts are like, you have to tell somebody 3 times. I think 3 is the minimum. Yeah, I agree. In order to train, in order to set the standard, like we talked about earlier, you can't just say it once. It has to be in the company meeting. It has to be in the weekly update. It has to be on the Notion page. And it also has to be reminded when they're in their team meeting. Yeah. And it's just the way it is. And maybe it's because we're all too dang busy and we're all distracted and we got too many things going around in our brain. But I know that is probably the biggest change in the last 10 years is the need to over communicate in order to assess and understand if everyone understands what the thing is that you want them to know.
Yeah, over communicate and over plan. I think you have to plan more now than you probably ever had to do when you're talking about coaching and mentoring, because you can't just expect them to get it. You have to plan for, I think you can go into a coaching session, whether that's sports or business, and go, hey, we're going to talk about this time. And I may mention it 3 or 4 times and hopefully they get it, but I may need to take another meeting to get to it. I may need to push back something else because they didn't quite get it. And you need to plan that out. Like, what's the worst case scenario if the message doesn't get across the first 4 times I say it, what's the plan and how do I incorporate that later? And there's a lot more planning behind the scenes that leaders and managers are doing to help their coaching and mentoring.
Yeah, I mean, you have to remember, like when you're in a virtual meeting, as soon as that meeting ends, they're on to the next thing.
Yeah.
In the past, when you were all in an office together, you would all go to the coffee machine or you go get a glass of water, not every time, but you would have more chance encounters after that meeting if someone needed clarity. Those opportunities don't exist in the virtual world.
Yeah.
Unless you're proactive in reaching out on some communication medium like Slack or some sort of real-time Teams or something, you're just not getting those contextual updates. So the need to over communicate is absolutely real.
Yeah, and you just don't even have like to walk back to their offices. I mean, I know that like
Yep.
I have to walk to a meeting. You know, I do that on campus. I have to walk to my boss's office every Wednesday for a meeting. It's a 2-3 minute walk, but I have to walk back, and so I tend that 2-3 minutes just kind of thinking about it in my head. Like, let me just process this. Okay, and this is what I need to do when I get back. If we don't have that, if I'm on a Teams meeting and I get off, I'm like, okay, onto the email. Or I'm on the Teams meeting answering emails because I'm like, I'm not paying attention. It's just so much harder to not fully grasp everything.
Yeah, totally.
I think another aspect that is similar, but I think is very different, is role modeling. And I didn't lump this in there because for me, role modeling is very much I don't say selfish, but it's I'm going to be the best me, and hopefully people see that and look up to that. So what are your, how do you differentiate coaching, mentoring, and role modeling?
It's a good question. I hope that someone looks at me and how I carry myself and the way that I live and would say, there's something there. I want to learn more. Right. And to me, that's a bit of a role model. I hope, I have a son, I have 3 daughters, that I serve as a role model to them in some way, but not as this ideal, but more as the characteristics that I have, like that I'm a hard worker, that I'm honest. Like, to me, that's more of it. I think we make, especially with social media, we make a lot about influencers and things like that. To me, that's not a role model.
Yeah.
That's just someone who does a really good job convincing you there's something. I would rather, there's a phrase that we talk about a lot, the kids in your life, they catch more than you teach. Right. So they're going to catch way more. They're going to watch me and understand. So if I want to be fit, I need to do fitness things. Yeah. If I want them to understand how strong my faith is, they need to see me practicing that faith. Yeah. So to me, coaching is an active thing, and being a role model is more of a passive thing where I'm living my life in a way that they see my standards. I actually made a post on, I think it was Instagram recently, and it was, if I followed you around for the next 24 hours, would I know your goals?
That's really good.
Would I actually know what is important to you? And to me, being a role model, the things that are important to me are obvious.
Yep. Yeah, I think for me, role modeling is very much a non-communicated thing, right? I'm going to live my life how I live my life, and you're going to see it. Coaching and mentoring is I'm going to tell you, right? I'm going to tell you this is what I think you should do, or this is what you should do, or this is how you should do it. Whereas role modeling is like, I'm going to be the best me. I'm going to live my life and my standards, and you'll see it, and then you will choose to emulate it or not. And I think that's where role modeling is different. And that's why it's not kind of part of this conversation. Let's give the audience some tips. And again, if you're watching, you want to have questions, drop them in the chat, hit that like and subscribe. What are some signs or characteristics of a good coach or mentor?
I think the first thing is they're an incredible listener.
That's good.
You really, I think, especially like really good coaches, you think they're out there and they're good with the X's and O's. They understand the strategy. The first thing you have to do is listen. You have to understand the people under your watch. And then second to that would be a great communicator. I mean, I talked about it a little bit earlier. You have to be able to communicate at multiple levels, both verbally, written, visually. Like, maybe there's ways that you have to connect with your team, with the people you're mentoring. So I think those two are massive. Being a great listener, being a great communicator are two of the most important things.
Yeah, I agree. I think you have to listen to the people under you and figure out what the way they interpret the standards and the way they interpret the mission and the vision and the goals. And part of that is listening to what excites them, what they're good at, right? They may just go, hey, I'm not good at this. And you may go, hey, I think you're better than you want to be. But you don't just want to throw someone in something they're not passionate about, because you're not going to get the best effort. And communication is huge. I wrote down selflessness. You have to be outside yourself. It's not about what you are accomplishing. It's about what you're helping them accomplish. Yeah. Both in coaching and mentoring, it's what are you getting out of them? And for me, the best coaches, you eventually hear about them, but you don't hear about them right away, because it's not, oh my gosh, this guy's a great coach. It's all of a sudden 5 years down the road, I had this great coach back then. It's oh man, everybody keeps talking about this coach over here. Let's go find out about him. Right. And then eventually you get the John Woodens and the Coach K's and those type of guys who, because that history of people going, hey, this guy's a great coach, gets them that notoriety. Then I think there's this sense of compassion through the process of kind of, we talked about and touched on it, like there's going to be mistakes. Like you may go, hey, this is where we're headed, or this is something I'm trying to teach you. They're not going to get it right away, and having that compassion. Even me as a hammer, it's like, hey, I'm going to hammer this, but I know you're not going to get it, and that's okay, but we're going to keep working through it. And that's really hard to do at times, because you're like, hey, I've told you this 17 times. Why are you not getting this, right? And I've seen it with my son's coach. He's like, rebound. Why aren't you guys rebounding? I'm like, because they're just excited to be playing coach ball. Like they're just out there playing ball. Like they don't need, they lose it because they're excited. So it's having that compassion of, hey, we're going to make mistakes. There's going to be bumps in the road. I think it's a really good sign if you're trying to be a coach or a mentor, or if you have a coach or mentor and they don't have those tools or those traits or something. And so what are some signs of a bad coach or mentor in your opinion?
Yeah. I think I said this a little bit earlier, but they're about them. They're not about you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it's the number one. A coach or someone who is really about their own ego, their own stats, their own, how it makes them look. Yeah. It's like you said it, you have to be selfless. And when you're selfish, it just doesn't work. No. I think the other thing, and it's almost, I could just list the opposite. They're a terrible communicator. They're unplanned. I think one of the most important things is coming with a plan. Yeah. My coaches laugh at me because I have this ridiculous spreadsheet for the whole season where every day is a different tab and every practice is planned from minute 0 to minute 90 or 120, depending on, if it's a 90-minute practice or a 2-hour practice. But literally to the minute, 8 minutes, not 9, 8 minutes, not 10. Yeah. Because I think being a great planner shows your level of commitment to the team. Mm-hmm. And, what's a sign of a bad coach? Lack of commitment. Yeah. Not showing up, not being prepared, not having a plan. It just shows that you don't care. And I think when you're trying to influence, especially in the case of young athletes, it's a big deal. And I think, and it applies also with adults in a business setting as well. You show up to that company meeting, you don't have a plan, and they're a remote team. Guess what's happening when that virtual meeting?
Yeah, they're checking out real fast.
They've checked out during the meeting, and then they're all communicating afterwards. What was up with Dean today? He didn't even come to this meeting prepared. Why are we even here? What's the like? It will spread like wildfire.
Yeah, something I put they're aloof. They're just kind of like nonchalant, or they're just not proactive. I've seen coaches and mentors who they're reactive to things, like, oh, we're all sudden, oh, we let up, oh, we were unorganized for this event, or we let up, our defense was bad in this game, now we're going to fix that. It's like, no, you should be coaching that ahead of time. Like, be proactive in that.
Totally.
And especially with mentoring, when you're talking about someone's, like, you're trying to make them a better person in life, you can't go, oh, hey, now that you're dating someone, let's talk about dating. Like, you have kids, I have a kid, right? You don't teach them about dating and how to treat, a significant other or their future spouse when they get married. You do it ahead of time, because you can't just wait and go, oh, now that you're married, let me tell you all these things that you should have known, right? That's why, like, the birds and the bees talk is the birds and the bees talk before. Yeah. Right. It's not something you do after the fact. I mean, I think that's where we did a lot of time in society. It's like, oh, now that you're here, now let me tell you. It's like, no, I wish I would have known this ahead of time. Right. Yeah, totally. And so I think you have to be proactive. And I think a bad coach or leader is very narrow-minded, in the sense that they come with, this is how I've done it, and I've always done it this way, and I'm not going to do it any other way. And they just don't see that there's a way of doing things differently. They're not open to suggestions, or they're not learning. I'm a big believer in, like, you need to watch YouTube. So, right, I do fantasy football stuff as a side hobby, and I always tell people who come to me and we talk about YouTube strategies, I go, hey, you should be watching 3 videos that are not fantasy football related for every one fantasy football. Like, you need to learn from other people. What are they doing? Maybe watch one on, like, car repair or home maintenance. Like, watch what they're doing, the kind of the styles they do. You should watch videos on YouTube growth. Like, you need to constantly be learning, because if you're not learning, you're not growing, and you become stuck in your ways. So you need to be narrow-minded. You can't be narrow-minded.
A great question somebody asked me recently is, when was the last time you changed your mind on something?
That's really good.
It's fantastic. You're like, oh man, when was, because I'm pretty steadfast in my beliefs. Yeah. But, and it happened during lacrosse season this year. I used to think philosophically about this one aspect of the game. We didn't even give the detail. And then I saw how another coach did it. I'm like, why have I been so stuck in the mud on this thing for so long? I need to think outside the box in terms of this one strategy, because there's other ways.
Yeah, and there's a difference between changing your mind and just like relenting or compromising, right? Because it's like, okay, I'll just let you do it, and you still don't philosophically believe anything different. You're just letting someone do it differently. I think you're right. When's the last time you changed your mind is huge, because I don't think I've changed my mind in a long time, because I'm going, this is what we do and this is how we should do it. And someone asked me, it's funny because literally 20 minutes before I got done, someone's like, hey, did you see this, about YouTube videos and sharing links? I was like, that's something I've never heard. And I was like, that's not how marketing tells you to do it. It's not how anything. So I was like, let me find out. Let me reach out to some people who know more about me and learn, because I only know what I know and I don't know what I don't know. And right. when something comes up, it's like, man, I just don't know. Let me find out and let me learn, because I can't just be stuck in my ways. We're going to wrap this up, but you've been coaching and mentoring for a long time. Obviously, you're successful in business as a CEO at Ingage. You have a large distributed team. You've coached for 25 years in lacrosse. You've had success in that. What are some tips, tools, ideas that people can take and they can use to help them be better coaches and mentors?
Yeah, I'll start with this. I think the number one thing is show up prepared. Mm-hmm. You cannot stand in front of a group of people, whether they're athletes or whether they're your company, whether they're your employees, or I call my employees team members. I never call anybody an employee. Like, we're a big team I don't call us a family, because you can't fire family members. But you can, but it's a little harder. There's still blood. But the number one thing is just being prepared. I mean, I've built my career and my name, I think, on showing up prepared, ready to go every single time. That to me is the number one tip. Just show up ready to go. Show up with a game face ready to go. Yeah,
and I would say organization is huge. You have to be organized, and whatever that looks like for you. I am a organized chaos type person. I know you are very much a spreadsheet. Just look at the bookshelves behind you. They are very organized and symmetrical. Whatever organization works for you, you need to be organized. You need to know where is the things you're looking for, so you're not wasting time. You need to have, right, like you said, your schedule for practices need to be dialed in. It can't be like, I think it's going to be a 10 to 15, 20 minute practice. No, it's anywhere in between. Like, you have to be organized. Use spreadsheets, use Google Sheets. Yeah. I think communication tools, right? You talked about Slack, Teams, whatever that might be. Find a way that helps communicate and, pares down the amount of apps and technology you're using. Because I got companies that some use Slack. It's like, I just don't need all these different social media platforms and things to use. I just want one. And so, the university, it's like, hey, we're all using Teams. We used to have someone Slack. They're like, no one's allowed to use Slack anymore at the university. It's all on Teams, right? It's like, cool, get everybody in one place. And so it's all there for communication because it's organized. So I think that's the best way.
Well, can I give you one more?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's be a constant learner.
Yes,
always
I agree.
Be willing to learn more.
Yeah, always be willing to learn.
Always. I mean, I think one of the biggest questions I ask when I hire somebody is, how do you learn? What are the things that you do to consistently challenge yourself to be better at your job every single day? We're doing a big initiative internally, as you could probably guess, on artificial intelligence, AI. And we're challenging everyone to look at ways that they can implement AI in their workflow to gain more efficiencies. So how can I grow my company from X to 2X with no more people, but just efficiency and process? Right? AI is not going to come take your job, but somebody who knows how to leverage AI to get more done in that job, very much likely to do that. So I think that idea of being a constant learner, no matter what it is, to make you a better coach, to make you better with technical skills, whatever the things are that you need, that is a massive thing in my opinion for any coach, mentor, anybody in general. But if you want to be a great coach, you have to be expanding your abilities.
Yeah, I agree, right? Because there's always going to be new philosophies and new tech. And you can't just go, well, it's not going to be a thing. And it might, the thing you're learning today might be a thing. It might not be a thing, but at least you learned it, right? And it may be applicable down the road. I totally agree with you. And efficiencies is huge. I'm always big on efficiencies. Everywhere I go, I'm like, what efficiencies? Well, how can I make this more efficient? Or this is an inefficient X, use of space, time wasted, like all those things. Like, let's cut those down, because I want to be efficient. Because, right, you can get more done in a shorter period of time if you're just more efficient. So if you're trying to be a good coach or mentor, you need to be efficient, need to learn. I think these are all good tips. Dean, before we get out of here, any last thoughts on coaching and mentoring you want to give the audience?
I think you mentioned something earlier that maybe it's not for everyone. I do believe, though, that we all have something to contribute that we
Yes.
can help someone to be better than they are today.
Yeah.
And it may not be being the head coach of a team. It may not be being the CEO of a company, but we all have skills and value that we can bring to others in our life. And to sell yourself short to think that you can't, I think you have to try. I think there's always something that you know a little bit more than someone else. That there's value that you can bring to other people. And I think the more we bring value to each other, I mean, it's just going to make everything better. I mean, it's a little Pollyanna, but it's true though. Like we all have value that we bring.
It is very true. Like, right, some people are not meant to be like coaches or mentors, but you can teach and coach someone on one specific thing that you're good at. You're right. If you are good at building spreadsheets, I'm decent with spreadsheets, and there's things like, I don't know how to do this, let me find someone, right? My wife just said she had to do a spreadsheet, and she called her friend, another mom at school, and was like, hey, can you come over and we'll go get coffee and you can help me with the spreadsheet? She's like, I think I have it, but just want to be sure. Like, her friend came over and he helped her. We went to Disney over spring break, and we ended up doing it with 3 other families from my son's school. And I was like, listen, I'm planning the trip. And they're like, okay. And I was like, and so I planned out, I had it all laid out. I was like, these are the 10 rides we're doing. We have 10 hours. So it's an hour per ride. We're supposed to wait and ride. And we're sitting there like, where at? I'm like, hey, we're ahead of schedule. And so, cause that's one of my giftings is like, I'm going to teach you guys that. And they're like, show me how to do this. I was like, this is what I did. I just took all the, And so it's just, you can teach someone something. You may not be the overarching head coach, but you can be the, that's why football teams have a head coach and they have 50 assistant coaches and they have one for every position. Cause you just might be able to teach one defensive back a technique, and that's all you. If that's all you do, that's still there is still value in that. Totally. So I think there's tons of value that we have, and you're right. Sharing your skills and your knowledge with people just helps make everyone better. And I think we don't do a good job of that. I don't think in general mentoring is something that we do in today's society. I think people want to be mentored, and I'll say this, but people want to be mentored, but they don't really want to mentor. What they want is someone just to validate their thoughts, feelings, and actions, and that's not mentoring. Mentoring is challenging you and asking you questions, and coaching is challenging you and asking your assumptions. And as a mentor, the person, your mentee, may not always do what you want them to do, and that's okay. But as a mentee, you can't just expect your mentor to go be like, yeah, you're doing great. This is awesome. Everything you said is awesome. The things you're doing
is to challenge you.
Yeah, they're there to challenge you. And I think people are looking for validation, and they think that's what mentoring is. And it's like, no, that's not what mentoring is. Mentoring is there to challenge you. Coaches should challenge you. If someone is just validating your feelings and your actions and your thought processes, that's not coaching and mentoring. That is not that peer coaching or mentoring. That is not a true mentor. That is not someone you are mentoring them. Your mentee is not getting anything out of that because you're just validating everything they're saying. So you have to be challenged by it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll leave you with this too. I think it's okay to ask for help, and I think it's okay to get a coach. Like I have a business coach, I have a fitness coach, and I'm pretty good at both. But I still want people pouring into me. I still want people challenging me. And that in my life is so important. Yeah. And I think a lot of times we get a little complacent and they're like, I don't need any more. Yeah, I'm muscle through it on my own. I think that's a mistake. I have tomorrow, I can't wait for it. My weekly coaching call, and it's awesome. It's a group and we all challenge each other, and it's incredible. Because they challenge me in ways and I get to challenge them back, and I get to learn from their mistakes. And it's one of the best investments I've made in myself and in my company in the last 5 years.
Yeah. Having people pour into you and in turn pouring out into others is a time and a place where I think I have the same thing. I have a group of guys that we meet on Monday, and it's us pouring into each other, and it's the best times ever. And that's where I think really people are lacking. And we talk about communities and tribes, and we're going to have a podcast on that down the road. But there just needs to find time in your life where you are having someone pour into you and have someone speak into your life, and you're speaking into someone else's life, because you'll get so much joy out of that.
100%.
Well, Dean, before we leave, let everybody know where they can find Ingage, what you do, and anything else that you want to kind of pub right now. Yeah,
sure. I mean, if you want to, I'm on Instagram. Coach Dean Curtis is my Instagram handle. I do a lot of leadership stuff on there, as well as just share my life and what I'm up to. I don't know if it's interesting to many people, but some people find it a little interesting. And then from a company perspective, we're at Ingage with an INGAGE.io. We're interactive presentation software for your sales team. So if you have a sales team and you want to improve how they present when they're with their customers, we're your guys. So we can help you with that.
And obviously I follow you on LinkedIn and Instagram, and I love seeing the stuff you guys put out there. It's not something I would ever like need or probably use in my life right now, but it's like, this is really cool technology. So
yeah.
Dean, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you guys for listening. If you guys are watching this after the live, feel free to drop your comments and questions in the comments there on YouTube. I hop on and answer it. If there's something you ask specifically for Dean, I can always message it to him as well. I appreciate you guys tuning in. This has been Bridge the Gap. Hit that like and subscribe. It helps me grow. We're going to got some other conversations coming up. I've thrown out some big asks to some bigger names in the business world, in the YouTube world, in the music and food world, and I'm hoping to get some guests on soon. So I keep trying to find people for you guys. If there's a topic you want me to cover, drop it in the comments. I'll find someone who can come on and be kind of the expert for those topics. So I appreciate you guys. Until next time.
Thanks for tuning in to Bridge the